project starting off with Big Water.
Yeah, I think the very first song, at least on this side, is going to be Big Water. It'll really be dependent on what people play that side or this side first. So I'm just logging in now. How are things been going in the process?
Yeah, so far so good. It's been interesting to watch the workflow of this session. Basically, what I was expecting was him to be working on each song like one at a time, but basically how he has it laid out, he's got all the songs laid out in order, and instead of working on a full song one at a time, he basically started the session by going through the waveforms of all the audio throughout the whole album and finding the loudest peaks of the audio and then labeling them. So I'm looking at the session right now. He's got about 15 different markers throughout the whole album of just like the loud peaks. He's basically been jumping back and forth between the peaks and working from there to make little subtle adjustments to each song. Really just making sure that the whole album flows in the same consistent space, like same levels, same frequency spectrum ranges and such. It's been interesting because he also, looking at the session, he writes a lot of notes, especially right in the beginning. He did listen through and was writing notes at each of the loud points. So you can see like Ballad of Billy May, Make It Brighter. You could see in Creeping Cthulhu, a little subby, little muddy, little heavy. You can see in Dogs, it just says good. Dogs lead is good. So basically, it seems like his workflow, he finds the loudest peaks, makes his initial notes on the songs as a whole, and then he just goes one marker at a time, fixing little things, touching the bass on this song, then listening back to the song before it to compare the bass, listening to the snare in the next song, the higher frequency ranges, and just making subtle adjustments. And it's all super subtle stuff, super subtle. As you watch him work, when he's making his adjustments, especially when he's using EQ, compression, volume, anything like that, there hasn't been any adjustments of more than like 1 dB, like at the most, especially when it comes to the EQ. It hasn't been more than like 1 dB. It's usually like 0.4, 0.5 dB of a change at the most. So it's a lot of subtle stuff that adds up, but it's sounding good so far.
So there's a real precision there. So he laid out all those little yellow markers are his peaks, and then he's just been bouncing back and forth, finding that peak, and then whether using equalization. Have you seen compression or other filters or tools used at this point?
Yeah, I have. So there was compression used. I'm trying to remember which song. There was a bus compressor. I've only seen it used on one song so far.
Okay.
And I want to say, no, it wasn't Unsinkable. But yes, there was a compressor used on one of the songs. Oh, Raised on the Dial.
Yep.
Yeah. Raised on the Dial's got some bus compression. And the compression was a little bit turned up, where he was getting about -2 to -3 dB of gain reduction, which for audio engineers, that can be a little bit heavy on mastering, but it's a good amount for heavier rock type music. Usually you'll see that amount of gain reduction, that amount of compression. Yeah.
So when you mix,
more than I would have put on, yeah. But it does sound, if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah. So when you mix these songs, you actually applied a mastering filter that they asked us to remove so they could go in and do their thing. And I know this is still early in the process, but are you able to hear the sonic differences between what you did and now what they're doing?
Well, I think the word filter might be not the right word.
Yeah.
I would use master processing.
Okay.
And as far as processing goes, I left all of my mastering stuff on these actually, and the only thing I took off was the limiter, which basically is the final tool to turn the volume up. So compared to like how the final product that mine turned out and how far these turned out, I don't have an answer for you yet because I got to wait until they're done. But I have been able to hear some of the slight adjustments that have been made. On Old Enough, one thing that I saw was that he took the 1.6 range, 1.6K, 1,600 hertz range of the frequency spectrum, which is considered like the upper mids, and boosted that just like 1 dB. And it made a difference in like the clarity of the vocals. The vocals and the snare just popped out just a little touch more, and I really liked it.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering because, that's, some of the horns may play there, and I know the harana at the end comes in, but I know the harana really lives there.
Yeah, the harana loves to sit right kind of in the lower mid range, kind of in the 3 to 4.
Oh, okay, a little lower.
Range.
Yeah.
It's a little bit lower, yeah.
Okay.
It's got those deep strung sounds to it. In that 1.6 range is where the horns are sitting too, so the horns get a little bit more pop. Good. Yeah, the higher range of the horns at least.
I'm digging the horns in that song.
Yeah. One other thing that I think is kind of cool to note, a lot of mastering engineers I know, one thing I do myself is I'll use reference tracks when I'm mastering, just something to compare the mix that I'm working on to. Like it'll be like a professionally released record, and I'll use it just as a point of comparison, making sure, okay, things are kind of sitting in a similar space here, because I want the song to sound professional.
Right.
The reference songs that he chose for this session, there's one Tame Impala song called The Less I Know the Better, and then there was a Lord song called Royals. So listening back and forth between like Unsinkable and then Royals, it's been pretty fun to listen to.
That's an interesting dynamic, because we've been trying to answer the question when asked, who do you compare yourself to? Where, what genre? And, we kind of resist that, but it's interesting that the sonic expert picked those songs to sonically reference and compare our material. That's fun. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it's been interesting because the bass is actually a pretty similar sounding bass in Royals as it is to Unsinkable, which I didn't even think of. But it's been sounding good.
So he compared it Royals. What was the other song?
The other song was a Tame Impala song called The Less I Know the Better, but I haven't heard him bounce back and forth between that song and anything else yet. He just has it in the session.
Okay.
But he's using Royals as his Royals by Lord is his choice for a reference song.
Yep.
When I was mixing Unsinkable, I also used a reference song. I used 2 reference songs, and the songs that I chose, one was Time of My Life by the Beatles, and the other song was Spirit of the Radio by Rush.
Begin the day with a friendly voice, a companion unobtrusive. Yes.
I felt like your voice sat in that same space and range as Spirit of the Radio. So I was going for that. And then I was using the Beatles song for like the pianos in Unsinkable.
Oh, well, props to you, man.
I thought it sounded good, but it's just interesting. I think just different mixing, mastering engineers using different reference tracks.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been cool. I'm gonna stay tuned, and I'll give you a buzz when they get to the final phase of it, and we'll see if we can get us all on the phone together.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
All right. Good talking.
All right. Good chat. Later.
See you.
How broke to get before you break?